Yes. All right. Well, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're tuning in from today on this beautiful day. And welcome to today's webinar, Optimal Nutrition at All Ages, Culinary Nutrition for the Early Years and Beyond. My name is Beth Stark, and I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist and the director of nutrition outreach with Northeast Beef Promotion Initiative, or NEBPI for short. If you're wondering who is NEBPI, we are a small but mighty team housed within the PA Beef Council that works on behalf of beef farmers and ranchers to develop and execute programming through the beef checkoff for healthcare professionals, consumers, and retail and food service professionals in the Northeast region, which spans the states from Maine to Virginia. As for today's housekeeping items for the webinar, today's webinar is being hosted via Zoom webinar where your camera and microphone are disabled for an optimized viewing experience. If you have any questions or wish to address a presenter question during the cooking demo portion of our event today, please focus on the Q&A feature to have these questions or comments addressed. We are recording this webinar and you will receive that recording following today's webinar closing. In a follow-up email later today, you'll also receive relevant resources, today's recipes, as I mentioned, a link to the recording, a post-webinar survey link, the CEU certificate, links to recordings of our January and May webinars in case you missed those as well. And so now on to our main event. So I want to introduce our wonderful presenters, starting with Abby Gelman. Chef Abby Gelman is a spokesperson, recipe developer, educator, and recipe and product developer, educator, nationally recognized culinary nutrition expert, and the director of the Teaching Kitchen of Culinary Medicine at St. Barnabas Hospital in New York City. She creates, produces, and hosts cooking and nutrition videos and works with a wide variety of food companies and brands, commodity boards, food service operators, healthcare professionals, and private clients. She has 3 published cookbooks, all based on the Mediterranean diet, and appears in local and regional broadcast media and contributes to many publications as both an expert and an author. Abby will be presenting today with Julie Lopez, a registered dietitian and chef focusing on culinary nutrition. She teaches about nutrition through food by teaching cooking classes in person and virtually to help others gain confidence in the kitchen. As a culinary nutrition consultant, Julie also works on recipe development, culinary nutrition, communications, speaking engagements, and spokesperson work. Whew. And if that's not enough of an incredible background on both of our presenters, collectively, Abby and Julie have created Culinary Nutrition Studio, which provides culinary nutrition education to healthcare professionals through webinars, cooking demonstrations, hands-on workshops, and self-paced classes. So I highly recommend you checking out their programs online. So at this point, I'm going to pass the webinar over to our presenters to take it away.
Awesome. Hi. All right. We're going to start the slides in a second. So we're going to pop around here. All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We are going to kick off our webinar with some slides before we move on to our cooking demo. So you learned a little bit about us. You can find us on social media at Culinary Nutrition Studio or each of our individual accounts as well. This is who we are currently working with right now. And let's move on to our objectives for today. So today we are going to identify key nutrients needed every stage of life and how to incorporate beef into a healthy eating pattern. Gain practical tips, tricks, and ideas to share with clients, patients, and caregivers to optimize kitchen competence. And to apply culinary applications and how to adapt beef to fit in every life stage. So every bite really counts. So from our first 1,000 days of life and throughout our lifetime, you can start your baby with beef as a complementary first food, which can ensure that they get the nutrients they need for healthy growth and development. So whether we're in our 20s, our 40s, or 80s, or even beyond, beef continues to be delicious and a nutrition option to support our overall health as we age. So in this webinar, as chefs and registered dietitians, we plan to educate you, but also entertain you with some recipe ideas, tips, and tricks to incorporate more beef in the kitchen and provide practical applications for, again, your clients, patients, but also caregivers. I think that's a big piece for someone who is cooking for others. Let's start off with talking about taste. So your tongue has all these different taste buds. It's sensing all these tastes to your brain to be processed. You have your 5 senses: bitter, sweet, sour, salty, and umami, which is a savory taste. And your taste buds can sense all flavors in all areas of the tongue. They're just stronger in certain areas of the tongue. So you'll still taste a sweet taste in the back of your tongue, but it's going to be much stronger in the front. Genetics do play a role in how our taste buds are tasting these flavors. So for example, some people think cilantro has a strong soapy taste. That's a genetic trait, whereas others get that really floral flavor to it. When we also are talking about taste, we also need to think about smell, because smell enhances the taste, especially to foods that we know of. So something like onions and garlic sauteing in the pan, that has such a great aroma that you know what that sense and taste is going to be, or what you're going to be looking forward to. Also, you want to think about mouthfeel, of what the taste and the texture is within every single bite. When it comes to taste, we have to really think about everyone's preferences. Everyone is going to have a different preference when it comes to taste. Like, for instance, some people don't like one flavor, might love a different flavor, and vice versa. So we need to think about that when we're talking about educating the population, and we're not just basing it off of our own preferences. For babies and toddlers, again, every bite the baby takes counts, especially within those 1,000 first days of life. So starting your baby with beef can ensure they get nutrients they needed for healthy growth and development. For the first time ever, the Dietary Guidelines of Americans recommend introducing solid foods like beef to infants and toddlers in order to pack in every bite with protein, iron, zinc, and choline. So nutrients such as high quality protein, iron, zinc, and choline, which are all found in beef, support growing bodies and healthy brain development in babies and toddlers. So foods such as beef can provide babies with a good source of iron, which is important for that healthy brain development. And serving nutritious foods to babies and toddlers, they will be more apt to love to eat, like to try new things. You can try simple and easy methods like pureed foods, mashed foods, chopped foods, shredded meats in various stages to meet their changing feeding needs, which we are going to review. So toddlers, though, might be subject to what's known as food jags, when a child will only eat one food item or a very small group of food items meal after meal. They are not wanting to try new foods or try new ways of eating that food. So it's really important at these early stages to offer child-friendly portions, because loading too much on their plate may be a little overwhelming for them. Offering a variety of preparations. Maybe it's the same exact food, but you're offering it raw, cooked, maybe mixed with something, separate, together with other foods, depending on what else is being served, can be really helpful, because maybe they don't like prepared one way, but they might enjoy it in another way. I'm currently dealing with that with my daughter right now, especially with vegetables, is learning to see what kind of ways she prefers, especially with something like broccoli. Does not touch it steamed, but will devour it roasted. So that's how we're going to be serving to her right now. For toddlers too, they might be learning how to use utensils, and that might be a challenge or a frustration. So keeping finger food friendly foods in front of them that are easy to pick up could be helpful until they start really learning to utilize those utensils. So back to those dietary guidelines for infants and toddlers. Why is it especially important in the early years? The lean protein can really help with growth, development, and immunity. So iron also is a really important nutrient is going to help with brain development, critical component of blood cells that deliver oxygen throughout the body. So the iron in beef is highly absorbable, making it one of the best ways to meet iron needs for babies. So not only that, but it also contains those other essential nutrients like protein, zinc, and choline. Zinc, of course, is really important it's essential for growth and immunity as well. So let's talk about that nutrition profile of beef. Among the powerful package of 10 essential nutrients beef is known for, as you can see on the slide, protein may be one of the most notable. So in fact, 1 3-ounce cooked serving of beef provides about 50% of your daily value of this important nutrient, making it an excellent source. So when it comes to beef and your health, you can rest easy knowing that along with being delicious, beef contains those important nutrients that your body needs. And as you see here, we have iron, which helps your body use oxygen, choline that supports the nervous system development, protein, which can help preserve and build muscles, selenium, which can help protect cells from damage, vitamins B6 and B12, they can help maintain brain function, zinc, which helps maintain a healthy immune system, phosphorus, which helps build bones and teeth, niacin, which supports energy production and metabolism, and riboflavin, which helps convert food into fuel. So let's talk about baby-led weaning and this mixed approach. So there's no perfect way to introduce solid food to your baby for the very first time, but there are 3 general approaches to feeding. So it could be strictly baby-led weaning, which is the finger food first approach where they're just self-feeding. You can start with spoon feeding where you're spooning the food for your child, or a mixture, a combo feeding, a mixture of that spoon feeding and self-feeding. There is no perfect way, and you have to do what is best for your child and what you're comfortable with as well. So regardless of the approach you take, solid food should be a complement and not replace either breast or human milk or formula until your baby is at least 1 year old. It will be a supplement to the breast milk or formula. Nutritionally, the best first foods for babies are those high in iron, protein, calcium, vitamins A, C, D, and zinc, with iron being one of the most critical of these nutrients. As we talked about that, again, beef makes it highly absorbable. And beef, people don't necessarily know or consider it part of a first food, but it can be safely offered to babies as one of their first foods. Whether you're doing purees, baby-led weaning, or that combination, here are some easy ways to adapt and create age-appropriate ways to serve beef to babies or any other food. So we want to definitely think about textures and sizes for babies. At that 6 to 8 month old range, food must be large enough for a baby to pick up and self-feed independently to provide the most protection against choking. So that would be like a large, soft strawberry or a spear of roasted zucchini. In general, you want to prepare the food the size to fit the following characteristics. So about the length and width of 2 adult fingers, large enough that it will stick out above and below the baby's closed fists so they can grasp on easily. And as the baby learns to chew, there are 3 main food textures that are going to be the safest. So foods that are soft and easily mashed by the baby's tongue and palate and can quickly be broken down without coordinated chewing skills. Foods that are slightly firmer, but still start to break down into smaller pieces with a bit of sucking or gnawing, or highly resistant foods, which we can call them these quote unquote unbreakable foods, which a baby can gnaw on, but won't break off any chunks or big pieces. So they start really learning a taste of the food. Then around your 9 to 12 months, around that 9-month period, babies develop more of their pincer grasp, which is a fine motor skill where the pointer finger and the thumb come together. The pincer grasp gives babies the ability to pick up smaller pieces of food. So around that 9 to 12 month, the baby may now have the skills and ability to self-feed a little bit more, and different food shapes and sizes can be included. So you want to do about ruler thin slices, shreds, small bites, or pieces. And you can kind of see how that same food is being adapted in different ways based on how old the child is. When we move on to that 12 to 18 months, at this age, the child can likely eat whatever you're eating with a few modifications. So serve foods by cutting them in smaller pieces. It could be for them to grab or also practice with utensils. Soft and large so the child can take bites, such as like that whole ripe banana. You can slice or shred foods. Cook those resistant foods requiring a lot of chewing until they're soft enough, or to serve in ruler thin slices, shreds, or dicing. Cook meat and fish on the more well done side versus rare, so it's not as chewy. And again, go based off of how your child is responding to these different methods. Some are going to be a little bit more advanced and move faster, and some are going to be a little bit slower. But the whole idea is you're continuing to add these foods on their plate in different styles, different shapes, different textures to get them ready. So it's really important to serve what you are eating, and you can alter the texture of the same meal to make it meal appropriate for the child's age. So you can see in this example, we have pasta and meatballs, or we have some beef and sweet potatoes, and there might be some couscous on the side, and replacing with some broccoli for the child. But it's that same meal, and showing that you're eating the same thing can help with the baby or the child seeing that this meal is delicious. They're seeing the parents eat it or their caregivers eat it, and can be helpful for them to try new foods. So for meat or any beef here, we're looking for moister or fattier cuts. So the fattier could be a good option depending on the age or cut. It provides more moisture, which can help reduce choking hazard. Or if you're cooking it in a more of a liquid or braise, it can soften the tougher cuts of meats. So for instance, like a brisket, you would want to serve it in a bigger chunk in the beginning for the baby to like really gnaw on. Around that 9 to 12 months, more finer pieces, and then 12 months or older can be more served in those like chunks. And we're going to go over this in the cooking demo portion as well. And ground beef is a really great way to introduce babies to beef. And you can start that generally around that 6 months of age. So ground beef, you want to have soft pieces of beef that kids can chew, so breaking it down really fine. Moisture, again, is the key to making the meat safe for babies to eat. So avoid any like dry meat. That can be a choking risk. Put on a sauce or a gravy. And again, fattier meats. So the fattier combination, like an 80-20, might be a good option as well, especially for ground beef. So when it comes to meatballs, creating it with a ground beef mixture, they can be offered to babies, again, 6 months of age, as long as the meatball are cooked thoroughly, they're soft, and they're at least 2 inches in diameter. The bigger the meatball, the less likely the baby will be to shove the whole thing in their mouth to create a choking hazard. And then again, as they progress in age, you're going to cut them into smaller pieces, and then maybe even those little chunks for them to grab.
Okay, so we're going to kind of move into a broader family view. So again, as Julie was saying, beef and all sorts of produce, fruits and veggies are a perfect union. Incorporating produce with beef adds nutrients, flavor, and texture. There's room on the plate for both. We can create balanced, nutritious, and delicious meals that will be crave-worthy for the whole family. And it's an opportunity to improve diets at all life stages. So adolescents and teens, I have one of these. It's a lot of rapid growth. The nutritional needs are really in high demand. And if any of you work with teenagers or have a teenager, some days they could be eating 4,000 calories a day, especially if they're playing sports and other things. So we really want to make sure we're giving them high quality nutrients as much as possible. So we need protein, calcium, and iron are particularly in high demand. Snack choices are going to be really important to help fulfill those nutritional needs. And nutrients of primary concern due to inadequate intake are calcium, iron, vitamin A, vitamin C, and a lot of times also just general total calories and protein. So here are some tips and tricks that we like when we're especially dealing with those tweens and teens. Do it yourself tacos. So I do this in my home once a week. So it could be ground beef. We're going to show you this kind of recipe today with a nice general spice blend that you can make and have on hand all the time. And then you just put in some ground beef, and then you would just use any kind of veggies that you like. It could be peppers and onions. It could be beans and tomatoes and corn. It could be salsa in there, and it could change seasonally. It could change based on what you have in your vegetable drawer that day. But kind of sky's the limit here, and it's one of those choose your own adventures that work really well when we're talking about a family or a group of people trying to eat the same meal. And again, the stuffed baked potatoes or stuffed sweet potatoes is another thing we do every week. It's again that choose your own adventure. So you have that potato or sweet potato, you can top it with, it's a great way for leftovers. So if you had that ground beef taco yesterday, then today you can use the leftover ground beef as one of your toppings for your baked potato. Sour cream, scallions, maybe some roasted broccoli or roasted cauliflower. Again, you can kind of, sky's the limit here, and you just put out a bunch of things and let everyone kind of choose their own adventure. And then the third one here is chili, which we're going to make today also with different toppings. We're going to do it with some chuck, that cut of beef. You can also do it with ground beef. And again, you can do different types of toppings. You can have an assortment of veggies and beans in there as well. And a few others that a lot of people know to be kid favorites are sloppy joes. And you can make that sloppy joe mixture with veggies in it, like mushrooms and onions and grated zucchini. We actually have friends whose son just graduated from high school. And since the time he was little, his mom made sloppy joes with half ground beef and half mushrooms that she pulsed in the food processor and then cooked them. Until a year ago, he didn't know there were mushrooms in there. And they ate them at least once a week for pretty much his entire life. So, you can hide stuff. They won't figure it out. And then, of course, pasta with meat sauce is another good one to look to. For adults, and this, again, goes for all ages, but we want to focus on those whole grains. So maybe we are incorporating some farro or wheat berries or some whole grain pasta, lean protein, which again could be that beef, a lean cut or a ground lean version of beef. Those good healthy fats, whether it's avocado or different vegetable oils. Calcium is another thing we want to focus on, especially for women as we get older. And then, of course, fiber. We want to make sure we're getting enough fiber every day as well in the form of different plants. And when we're talking about pregnancy, I know that a lot of women get things thrown at them when they're pregnant, and trying to keep everything in check can be confusing. But here's kind of our top list here. We want to, again, make sure that we have enough protein. Our needs do increase during pregnancy. We want to incorporate those omega-3 fatty acids into our diet. And iron is very important, especially because our blood volume increases while we are pregnant. Calcium and folate intake is important. And then of course, vitamins A and C, those requirements increase as well. All right, here are some more of our favorite tips, tricks, and hacks. I love a good sheet pan meal. So you could put veggies on a sheet pan, and then you could maybe put a skirt steak or a flank steak on there as well. You cook it all together, and then you use whatever leftovers you have throughout the week. So you see that over on the right side, that utilizing leftovers. So maybe you're meal prepping one day for 1 or 2 hours, you're making a steak, you're making meatballs or chili or stew. You can freeze them in portion sizes, or utilize leftovers throughout the week or the month. And then of course, aging, when we hit 60 and older, it is currently our fastest growing population. So we want to make sure we're getting enough protein throughout the day to maintain our muscle mass and try to avoid sarcopenia. So we need to really focus on the nutrients we need. So that protein is a big one, plus potassium, calcium, vitamin D, dietary fiber, and vitamin B12. And another thing we wanted to mention is that as we age, our ability to absorb that vitamin B12 can decrease because it's related to the stomach acid and how it becomes less, what the word I'm looking for? It doesn't work as well as we get older, I guess. So it can lower our absorption of B12. Plus, if we're taking different medicines, that may interfere as well. So getting enough protein and foods that are fortified with B12 can make sure that we are really getting what we need. And then our final tips, tricks, and hacks for aging. I know a lot of us are empty nesters then, or maybe we're living alone, or just 2 of us. So we don't want to cook as much necessarily, or we're eating less food. So again, with that meal planning and freezing those individual portions. So if we make a stew, you can freeze it individually, and then you are able to grab it and have it whenever you want. Those ready to eat options are wonderful, whether it's canned or frozen. They stay for a very long time, and it's great to have them on hand. And then if we're talking about altered textures, if you're looking to a mechanical or soft or pureed diet, we want to try to make it look presentable. And it's similar to little kids who are having altered textures because they're babies or toddlers. As aging adults, if we have to have those types of diets too, we want to eat, right? We still want to make sure that food is enjoyable. So looking to those different types of diets, especially if we're in a clinical setting, it's important to make them appealing. All right, so now we're going to cook. Julie is going to kick off with the chunky beef chili. And we're also going to do a confetti taco salad. So it's going to be great. And our thank you, of course, to Beef. And as Beth mentioned, we're going to send out some resources in the follow-up email.
Including the recipes. And then here's our quick references for some of the things we talked about during our presentation.
Absolutely. Such great information, ladies, and I'm super jazzed for the cooking demo portion. Just a quick reminder to all of our attendees, we've had a couple of questions filter into the Q&A portion. Just remember that we are checking this regularly. We do have the chat function unavailable for just everyone's viewing experience, but please pop those questions and or comments into the Q&A. Julie will be throwing out some different questions for our audience, and I'll be filtering out those answers to her as well. So let's take it away in the kitchen.
So any questions before we dive in that are pressing that we need to address right now? Or should we just wait to the end?
Well, actually, I can throw you this one. So this one is just more of a general question. How did everyone get started in culinary nutrition? So maybe you and Abby both could just briefly share kind of what got you to where you are as a culinary dietitian expert, and maybe any advice for how a dietitian might find themselves in that situation down the road.
I love answering this one because Abby and I had opposite experiences. So I'll go first. So I just loved cooking growing up, and I always was really interested in it. But when I started really getting into sports, I was learning more about how food can really help your performance. So that's what really got me into more of the nutrition. I went to a school first, and my major was health promotion. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't even know really what a dietitian was or what they did. And then I decided didn't really like that school. I wanted to go somewhere else. And then I was thinking about culinary school, what kind of track I could do with that. And I saw that Johnson & Wales had culinary nutrition. So that was my major. And I did all my DVD courses along with all my culinary courses. And then after that, it was more of how can I do what I really want to do is educate about nutrition through food. And I did my dietetic internship because I really wanted to marry those two together. And that was kind of my journey. Culinary school first, and then moving on to the dietetic internship, and Abby was opposite.
Kind of. I won't do the whole long story because it's long, but I was always a foodie, and I worked in hotels and restaurants, and I went to the hotel school at Cornell and was a finance major. But we had to cook when we were there, and I worked in restaurants, was very interested in food, but we were always cooking like a French method, so a lot of butter and cream and all of that. Graduated, was doing consulting, working in corporate America. Was still thinking about food and nutrition. Oh, I took a nutrition course in college too. Went to culinary school instead of getting my MBA. Yay! Still did consulting. And then eventually decided finance and consulting and working on Wall Street was not great. My daughter was born, I left and went and got my master's in nutrition. And when I was there, I saw a lot of people with me, and most of them didn't cook, but we were all in the same graduate program for dietetics. So I kind of focused on culinary then, having already gone to culinary school and worked in restaurants and everything. And now we're here many years later. So that's the short version.
So we both have started our own businesses in culinary nutrition, and then we decided to partner up to develop Culinary Nutrition Studio. So we are big, what's the word I'm looking for? But we want dietitians and healthcare professionals to cook more and to be more confident in the kitchen. So you don't have to go to culinary school, but you still need to learn the basics, because if you're going to try to educate about food, you need to know how to cook the food. You can't just blindly recommend, okay, eat a whole grain. What does that entail? How do you cook it? How do you shop for it? How do you prepare it in multiple ways? How do you adapt it to different cultures and cuisines? It's so important because it's not just what you typically eat. You're teaching a population. So you need to adapt to what their preferences are too. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
short,
I love that because
kind of long answer to that.
thought process, maybe you have to be like through culinary school and a little bit more of a formal type of training, but I love that you just kind of dispelled that myth, and you offer great programming to get someone started and to start building their confidence to determine like what their own path might be. So awesome. I love hearing that story from each of you. That's actually all the questions that we have right now. So again, attendees, please throw those questions our way, and we'll definitely address those throughout the remainder of our webinar this afternoon. So I will let you both go from here.
Awesome. All right. So I'm starting with our chunky beef. And like Abby mentioned, we are going to do, you said it was chuck, right? Yeah, we're doing a chuck. It can be any kind of like stew meat. This is usually a more affordable cut. So what I like about this recipe, number one, we're starting off with an affordable option. And this recipe is from Beef It's What's for Dinner. So if you go on their website, they have a lot of great recipes. And this one is really simple, but I'm adding a couple things based off what we had in the fridge. And what I like about those kind of recipes is, again, you're creating it to fit your need or your taste and preferences. So with this cut, a lot of chilies start off with a ground beef. We are starting off with this kind of stew meat. And as you see here, you can kind of see potentially in the overhead that you have more marbleization within the cut of beef. And that's making it a little bit fattier. And that fattier consistency is going to be moister, so we can adapt it to different stages. Again, when we're adapting a recipe to fit the needs. So babies can eat this throughout, elderly, and we can still alter the texture for this. So this is just cut into like about 1-2 inch pieces here. And I'm going to actually start browning this. So anytime you are cooking, basic skills here. We want to start off with a nice hot pan. That is on. So hot pan. Then I'm going to add my oil. Then I'm going to add our beef. What happens is people will turn on their pan, pour in the oil, dump it in right away. Cooking is a transfer of heat. So our heat of our pan is going to heat up the oil. The oil is just going to transfer to the meat. If we do not do this, what's going to happen is that oil is just going to soak in whatever we are starting to cook. We're going to have a bone dry pan. We're going to need more oil. We don't really want that. It's going to be the uneven cooking process. We want this to brown nice and evenly. So this is getting warm. You can kind of put your hand over it. Feel that heat coming through. I'm starting with a little bit of olive oil here. You can always add in some vegetable oil. We need to, again, adapt to how people are cooking at home, what they have on hand, and what's going to be an affordable option. So we want to make sure that our oil is nice and warm. And you can tell by the way it kind of shimmers and shines. I was recently watching a cooking demo and someone mentioned that you can do a little splash of water in there. Do not do that. Please do not do that. It will definitely spark up that oil and splatter. So I don't recommend that at all. So just let them look for that shimmer and shine. And again, you're going to feel that heat coming through. So this is going to be good and ready to go. So again, this is our beef that we're adding in. And do you hear the sizzle and simmer? You might not be able to, but I hear it. And that is our applause for us that we did a good job. We waited till our pan is nice and hot and ready to go. But also that's what we're looking for here. Now, the beef is in the pan. Leave it alone. Don't try to keep moving it right away. It will be stuck to the pan. We have enough oil in there to help it move around. A big thing with cooking proteins is people touch it too much. They move it too much. Just let it kind of do its thing for a second before you start moving it around. I'm just going to make sure that enough pieces are covering the bottom of the pan, but that's it. So we'll leave that guy alone for a second. And let's talk about all of our mix-ins. So we're going to start off with the base, and we are going to cut an onion. As you see here, I have my garbage little dish right here. That is something that if you want to be more efficient in the kitchen, always have this ready to go instead of running back and forth to the garbage. Plus, if you're running back and forth, you're more likely to get some scraps on the ground, and then you're now cleaning up the kitchen even more. When you have an onion, if you've taken a class with us before, Abby calls this from the rooter to the tutor. I just say the root end, the stem end. You want to keep that intact because all the layers of the onion are attaching there. And when we cut that off, then we're going to have pieces of onion everywhere. So this is the most efficient way to cut an onion. So we want to, again, keep that root end intact because all of that is connecting to our root end. Anytime you're cutting, you want a nice flat surface. So I'm going to cut off the ends to make it easier to peel. You don't have to do that. You can always just try to peel it then. And if a recipe calls for half an onion or 1 cup of onion, whatever it is, what do you do with the rest of your onion? Is it just going to go die in the back of your fridge? What do you guys do with it usually? I always recommend just cut it up and you can store it in the fridge or even put it in the freezer so it's ready to go. So you're prepped and ready for your next recipe. Additionally, if you don't enjoy cooking that much and you don't want to spend the time prepping or cooking as much, what are some other options you can do for this onion? Buy them already pre-chopped. Buy them pre-chopped and frozen already. The only thing, if you buy them frozen, this skin is really tough to get off right now. The only thing with your frozen is you might have a little bit more moisture when you directly add them to the pan, but that's okay. Just cook them a little bit longer and the moisture will evaporate out. All right, come on, you piece of peel. All right, here we go. Also, with our scraps, a big thing is we like to save our scraps. Any of our onion peel, carrot peels, ends of celery, whatever it is, get a bag ready in the freezer. Do you have a bag? Yeah. Abby can show you she has a bag ready to go. I'm going to start moving our beef around a little bit. Oh, never mind. She's starting a new bag, but we're going to put all of our scraps in this freezer bag, and just once it gets full of all these scraps, you can turn it into your own stock, beef stock, vegetable stock, chicken broth, whatever you want. But you have all of these scraps to go along with. All right, back to our onion. So I have my 2 nice halves here, keeping again that root end intact. And we want to create a grid. So we have a nice even dice. You can do different sizes of the grid based on how big of the chunks you want. I'm going to do them kind of moderate, not super small, but not super big. And first you want to create levels. So you want your fingers to be out of the way. So you want to fan them out like that. And we're going to slice. I'm just going to do 2 levels. And again, everything is still nice and intact. We have our levels there. Now we're going to go around the top here and cut the tip down of our knife. You might have a flyaway piece like that, which is fine, but essentially we have a grid here. And now all I'm doing is going to slice through. If you need to practice your knife skills, I highly recommend taking our course because we go through how to cut pretty much literally everything so you're confident to do it at home. We'll do this one here. So this is great because I'm mise-en-placing or getting everything ready for the next step as my beef is cooking. So we have our onion here ready to go. It's looking good. Ooh, the onion was a little potent. What are some tips or tricks that you know of to help with cutting onions if you're really sensitive? So an onion that makes you cry more typically is an older onion because those layers aren't as tight together. So some of that moisture is being released and those gases are causing more fumes and then they get dry and make you cry. So a couple little things you could do is if you cut it open, you can just run it under some cold water, get in between those layers a little bit, and some of that could help diffuse that situation. I mean, there are those little goggles you can wear. I don't know if they really work, but if you want to try, you can. The goggles. All right, this recipe doesn't have a pepper in it, but we had one, and I kind of wanted to show you how to cut it. Everyone has their own way. This is my favorite way to produce less waste. I'm cutting off the top and the bottom here. So these are all valuable pieces. And right now, my only waste is this little piece of the stem here. You can cut flanks down around, or you can kind of put it on its side and move your knife around, whatever is going to be easiest for you. But again, this is my only waste, just the seeds in the middle. I just like to avoid cutting it right down the middle because then you're cutting right through the seeds and the seeds get so sticky and stuck onto your cutting board. Anytime you're cutting a pepper, you want the skin side or shiny side down because it's easier to cut through the flesh. And the best tool you can have in your kitchen is a sharp knife. So I'm just going to rough chop these.
I want to interrupt really for 1 second here. This is Beth. We actually did open the chat just to encourage a little bit more engagement. The Q&A isn't quite the same community feel as the chat function is. So now already I'm seeing some more engagement. So yeah, I'll just throw some of these pieces of the feedback to you there, Julie. So someone's suggesting to dunk the onion in half of a bowl of water while prepping the other veggies. Just maybe that helps to minimize some of the intensity. Or yeah, waiting until the onion is the last ingredient to kind of like chop it up, or put it in the freezer in advance as well. So really good feedback. But yeah, again,
The
folks,
only
feel free
thing
to
about
put
the
those
freezer
responses in there.
is you have to remember that it's there. One time I left it in the freezer and I'm like, oops, now I have a frozen onion, fully solid. What am I gonna do with this? So just be aware
Don't
of
forget. Yeah.
all right, our beef is almost done here. I'm gonna move on to our jalapeno. So this, again, optional. I'm not going to add too much of this because I'm a little bit of a baby. I don't love a ton of heat in my food. But if you want it spicier, what could you do here? I'm sure you guys know.
Don't
No,
be shy.
I'll leave this.
Leave the seeds. Yes, thank you, Danielle. Woohoo! All right, so I'm just going to cut off a little bit of the side here. Again, I don't love like too spicy where it's too hot. So I'm just going to do these little cheeks of the jalapeno. Abby's laughing at me. So the finer you cut it, the more intense the flavor is going to be because you're releasing the natural juices in that jalapeno.
Julie, we have a question. Do you have a recommendation for a specific knife brand? I know that's always a common question. Like if you have a go-to or what you could suggest.
All you need is a sharp knife. It can be something
Just
you bought
sharp.
at Walmart. It could be something you bought at this fancy knife store. Just keep it sharp. I think that's the biggest one. Personally, at home, I have a Woodstock. This is a Max that we're using right now. Also, you have to think about the feel of it. We talk about that in our course. Like this, you can see here is a full tang, meaning this part of the blade and goes through the whole handle. So it's a little bit heavier to hold. Some people like that on their knife, while other people like a little bit lighter. So they'll opt for not a full tang and the blade stops here and then it's just a handle attached. Global knives are really light. I usually suggest that to the elderly population too, because if they have any arthritis or they're having hard to grip, that might be a light touch for them. All right, I'm going to take out our beef here. And this is going to go back in the pan. So we're just browning it to start.
Oh, and Julie, do you have a recommendation for a specific knife sharpener? Or, my gosh, knife sharpener or tool?
So, couple options again. You could, one sec, I'll leave this out. You could have a little handheld one where you're, you can just buy like 15, maybe less than that. Yeah, where you just have a coarse and a fine one that you can have in your kitchen. You can use electric ones. I don't love those because you don't have as much control, and sometimes people overdo it and kind of actually change the tip of their knife if they're not doing it properly. But then also if you have a stone with a mineral base, that's going to be your best option. They're a little bit more pricey, but I think it's a great thing to have to keep your knife sharp at home. Or you can send them out to get them sharpened. I'm adding my onion and my peppers and my jalapenos right to the pan right now. There's different like brands that you can send them to online where you just mail them out and they sharpen them and mail it back to you. One of my local grocery stores in New Jersey, they can actually bring your knives in there and they'll sharpen them for you.
Here
In New York too. Chelsea Market. Abby for staying in New York. So as you see, I did not wipe down my pan or anything. I love the little bits that are stuck to the bottom of my pan. Does anyone know what those are called? Those little bits that get kind of clinged on the bottom there. Anyone? Fun. Emily says fun. Fun. Yes, Emily. So we are very fond of the fond. It has a lot of flavor there. And if it's really stuck on, nothing really stuck on too much, but you can add a splash of wine or broth to really get that going. But I have a lot of moisture coming from my vegetables, so I don't need to really worry about that. Oh, I forgot to add, we have a little bit of carrot that I chopped up as well. So the original recipe just calls for the onion and the jalapeno, but we are going to add in, again, the pepper. We're adding in some carrots here that I finally diced up. And now a little bit of garlic. So why am I waiting to add the garlic? So you don't want to add the garlic right in the beginning. Yes, Danielle, thank you, to prevent it from burning it. So if you add your garlic too early, it will burn. And when you have burnt garlic, it has a very bitter taste. And we don't want that. We do not want a bitter chili. So adding that more towards after your onions are starting to become a little bit more translucent, there's a little bit more liquid in your pan as that natural moisture is being relieved. I'm actually going to add a little bit of salt here. Why do we use salt in cooking? What is its main purpose? So to break down protein. I can see it on the phone in front of me. To bring out the flavor, to enhance the flavor. It also has other properties too. So utilizing salt during the cooking process is going to help with that. So not only am I flavoring the vegetables right now, but also the other job that it's doing is drawing out some of that moisture. So we're not going to have a watered down flavor at the end of our chili. So flavor is going to help with the different mechanisms during the cooking process too. So also when you think about when there's salt in a baked good recipe, so brownies, cookies, a cake, whatever it is, there's always that pinch of salt. It's not meant to make our food taste salty. It's meant to enhance the flavors that we're working with. So you have a peanut butter chocolate cake going on. It's going to bring out those flavors. It's enhancing that flavor. It's not meant to make it taste salty. So using salt during the cooking process, definitely focus on building the flavors and enhancing them versus adding salt at the end of cooking to just kind of mask it. Some people think that salt to add taste, but it's really enhancing the ingredients that you're working with to bring them out. So we're gonna get those going. This is looking good. I wish you guys could smell this. It smells amazing right now. We're going to add our beef back in. And now I'm adding 2 cans of diced, they're fire roasted tomatoes, and they're already flavored with some green chilies. And again, this is a helpful way. So if someone is not really sharp or knowledgeable in what spices to use, you can use seasoned options. I love the fire roasted tomatoes. It kind of gives it that little bit of smokiness to it too. And now we're going to let the cooking process do its job.
So we actually have a comment that someone's been experimenting with Morton light salt, like a lower sodium. I don't know if you have anything to recommend or suggest about using a product like that.
Have the potassium added to it to make it lower sodium. I believe it does. So you just have to be careful for different patient populations. So if someone has renal disease, you might want to be careful of those different substitutes. Mm-hmm. I do have a little bit of beef broth here too, just in case. If your pan starts getting dry, those tomatoes, depending on what brand you're using, sometimes the moisture content's a little different. So you can add a splash of beef broth in there. But this is just going to cook and simmer for a little while until that beef is really tender. And then we're going to adjust it based on different needs. So if a baby's eating this, you can pick out pieces and adapt it to the needs that they have by cutting it, shredding it, keeping it in a big chunk, having even the vegetables be separated Like the peppers are a little bit bigger here, so those are going to be nice and soft for a child to eat. But then also how you can adapt it for an elderly person as well. So they might need the different textures. What I like about this again is now you can have this as is. You can put rice with it. You can put different whole grains with it. You can serve it over even with zucchini. Pieces of zucchini would be really good in addition to here. What other things would you potentially want to add to this chili recipe? What are your favorites?
I have to share, I actually love eating chili over noodles, like macaroni noodles or spaghetti.
Yeah.
Great way to use leftovers from your fridge too. So yeah, drop those suggestions in, anyone in the audience. And we also have a question on what heat level are you currently at on the stove?
So I was at a little bit of a higher temp when I was doing the beef. So like a medium, a little bit to the higher level. Then I moved it down to the medium just to get those vegetables really melding together. You don't want to start off too high with your veggies because then they're just going to start browning without releasing the moisture. And then I just bumped it up a little bit higher than medium, and now it's just going to sit and simmer for a while here. I'm actually going to move my pot to the other one so Abby can have room. You can see.
A lot of folks are saying they love, enjoying chili, with like extra beans or lentils, chili over tortilla chips, which you can't deny that one. Great toppings for nachos, of course. Yeah, rice. Lots of good suggestions here. Oh, baked potato. I love that.
Yeah. Someone recently told me that they did leftover mac and cheese, and then they put their chili on top of that.
Ooh.
I'm like, that sounds really good.
This is comfort food at its finest right there.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely you can mix and match with different flavors and seasonings and really turn it into what is going to meet your needs for nutritional value, but also textures and consistencies. Because again, it's so important to include variety and these nutritious foods from 0 to 100. That's my life goal, actually. Live to 100 and be alive and kicking and well. So I need those nice balanced meals to get me there.
That's great advice.
So any other questions before Abby moves on to the confetti taco salad?
Any other questions? And again, folks, we will have time for some Q&A at the end. So if you missed your chance here, please do drop it in there. We'll address it before we wrap up here as well. I have to say, chili is one of my favorite foods and recipes. So I'm jealous that I'm not there with you both in that kitchen. Actually, here's a great one.
We're gonna have a great lunch today.
Yes, you do. What cut would be the most tender? If you can suggest, I know we're using the chuck here today. If there would be like another tender cut, I know that we're tenderizing it too through the cooking process. Any other suggestions?
Other than chuck, you could use round, top round, eye of round, anything like that would be good.
Yeah, and if you do have a tougher meat too, just
Cook longer.
Maybe add more broth if needed to keep it that moist cooking method.
Exactly, because this right now we're gonna cook this at a simmer for a couple hours. So you could also you could do it in the Instant Pot and then it would be done pretty fast. You could the pressure cooker, you could do it in a slow cooker and put it in there overnight and then it'll be done in the morning. If you don't want to do it sitting on the stovetop for a couple hours. So you have kind of some options there. All right, so that is chili. We're gonna do some straight up tacos now. So this is generally a seasoning that we use constantly. So I mentioned it before, you can batch it up and just have it on your counter and ready to go whenever you're ready to go. So we have in the recipe the exact amounts you're going to use, but I like to keep a big container of it around. So as Julie mentioned, we're going to turn on our heat. This is my favorite pan. It's like a high-sided saute pan. So the sides are not as big as a wok, but it's pretty similar. And I like that it has this handle and everything else, and it's pretty sturdy. So I'm going to heat this up before I do anything else. And I'm going to pull some of these things over. So Julie already ruined my joke. It's from the Rooter to the Tutor.
And I laugh every time.
And she did most of the knife skills on purpose. So I'm just gonna quickly cut the onion here for us because I know people like to see it again. So from the rooter to the tutor, and then you want your flat side on the board. I'm gonna cut off this tip. And then again, I cut across, depending on the size of the onion and how big you want the dice, maybe 2 or 3 times. So then we have basement, first, second, third floor. And then we're going to cut across the striations this way, maybe 3 times. And with my claw moving across, so it comes off in that nice dice. I'll do that quickly again with the other side. So that nub goes away. Basement, first, second, third floor, dice, moving across. And if you are not super comfortable with your knife skills, you can go slow. You want to definitely go slow until you feel more comfortable, and then you can kind of pick up the speed, but slow and steady wins the race. So this is pretty warm now. I'm going to put in some of our oil. And again, like Julie said, you can see it immediately starting to get a little bit translucent. You should be able to see that the temperature has changed. I'm going to put in some of these onions. I'm going to use a bench scraper, actually, it's a little bit easier. So, okay. Okay, so there goes our onions. I'm gonna grab one of these, kind of break this up a little bit. I have it on medium high, but I'm gonna lower it to medium. And now I have a bunch of our spices here, and I'm gonna add them now, and they're gonna start to cook a little bit in that oil, which is called blooming your spices. So you're heating up the spices, and that will help to kind of develop those flavors, maybe give them a little bit toastiness, and really let them become a little more interesting and develop versus just adding them at the end. So in here we have, you can see it in our overhead camera, we have chili powder, cumin, onion powder, garlic powder, some red chili flakes, and some oregano, dried oregano. That's all going in. And then we have salt and pepper. All of that's going in. So then we're gonna mix everything around and let those spices bloom and cook right in with that onion and that oil. And we can smell it. It smells really good, super toasty. And since we're making something that we want to be able to use in our tacos and maybe use for leftovers, I chose to only do the onion. And then we're going to have kind of a choose your own adventure on the back end when we actually eat it. But you can add more veggies and things cooked here now if you want. Totally up to you. You're the one that's going to eat it, right? So if it tastes good to you and your family, it'll taste good to everyone. All right, so then in goes our beef. The ground beef, I think we did a 92% or 93% lean on this. So I'm just gonna break it up a little bit and get it cooking and try to incorporate those spices and onions with the meat. So you can see in that overhead camera that things are not really sticking on the bottom here. If they do, you can just put some water or some stock in there and deglaze it a little bit and get some of those good fond, the good brown bits up. So I'm just going to kind of leave it here for a second and let it cook. It's still on medium. And then we're going to talk about what we're putting out for our tacos. So here we have a cut up pepper. This is raw. Again, you can add it in here and have it be part of the cooked beef, or you can saute it on its own. You could also use like roasted peppers, would be delicious. In this bowl here, we have some baby spinach and some Napa cabbage. I tend to make taco salad when we have taco night in my home. So I always have some sort of greens here. You might be able to shove them in your taco. I am very messy, so I have trouble putting everything in the taco, and I like to have a big plate of stuff. We'll put a plate together. So the easy way to do it is these are multi-grain chips. I also often will have corn tortillas. We get really beautiful homemade corn tortillas here, and I will cut them into triangles, spray a little bit of oil spray on there, and bake them in the oven at 400 until they're crispy. And then I will often use those chips as part of my taco salad. But this is kind of the quick and easy option as well. Here we have, it was canned black beans, and I cut up a tomato, and we also cooked a couple ears of corn and then cut the corn off in here as well, since tomatoes and corn are in season. But you can certainly use thawed frozen corn or canned corn. But I liked having all of this kind of mixed up together already. We're just going to give our beef a quick stir here. We just want to try to get all of that pink cooked through. We do want to make sure that our ground beef is cooked through. Usually doesn't take too long. Okay. Then I have some cilantro here. That's one of our choose your own adventures. We have some scallions as well. I have some salsa, which we did open ahead of time. And we have some sour cream. I also have cheese. We can put cheese on here if you want. And of course our avocado. So
What other things could
yeah,
we
what,
add? We
what
have
other
so
things?
many.
My eyesight is so bad, I cannot see.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you.
So what other things would you put in your taco?
Oh, one thing I did want to add is if also for like chips or like a crusty kind of tortilla, you can put it on the open flame. But be careful because
You light it on fire.
yeah, it won't, well, your smoke alarm might go off. That happened to me, and I was just like standing in the kitchen with my kitchen towel, just like just swinging in the air.
That sounds terrifying. Yeah. We also, okay, so it's only my daughter and I, who is 16. I make the corn tortilla chips for me, and she has a special tortilla that she likes. It's half corn, half flour.
Oh, interesting.
So it's really delicious. So it's not as big as just a flour tortilla. It's not as small as just a regular corn. It's kind of in between the two sizes. And she usually has 3 or 4, and she can put all of the specific amounts of everything she wants in there and shove it in her little face. So, all right, this beef looks pretty good. So let's do a test plate. And here's the other thing that I love about this taco salad version. I don't need a salad dressing. So I use the sour cream and the salsa and mix it through the whole thing, and it really makes that nice dressing flavor for all of it. So if you skip the salsa and the sour cream, you could do like a red wine vinaigrette, olive oil type of thing. But I do it in a giant bowl usually. And so I'll put some of my greens in here, and then I'll put some of my veggies in here.
Oh, Patricia just said something. She said she planted tomatillos in her garden for the first time.
That's amazing. How'd they come out?
I have my first one today. Do you have any good suggestions for using tomatillos?
I do. I always have to cook them because they're I find the flavor better. So what I'll do is I will cut a bunch of tomatillos in half, maybe a couple of those big poblano peppers. So they're dark green and they're larger and they're not spicy. But I cut those in half, and then maybe a couple onions, and then I broil it So maybe 5 or 10 minutes so they're nice and brown. And then I put everything into the blender or the food processor with some lime juice, salt, pepper, puree it all. So you just made your own like salsa verde essentially. And then I put it on everything.
That sounds so good.
Delicious. So instead of this salsa, I would use that salsa verde and then mix it all in here. Or it's for dip, as a dip for chips and veggies and all of that kind of stuff. And that's what we do in the teaching kitchen, actually. We make bean cheese enchiladas with it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, some cilantro. And then I'm gonna put some of.
So curious in the chat, who thinks cilantro tastes like soap? Anyone here have that gene? Soap? Someone did it in all caps.
I don't know. We used to know the percentage of people
I forget now.
who had it because we talked about it in one of our things, but I don't remember anymore what it is. Okay, so then we put in our beef mixture. And the spices also add that really beautiful flavor throughout when we mix everything together. And then I will usually take some chips. So I love food in a bowl, you guys. Like I will eat every meal food in a bowl.
But then you get every flavor.
And I like the salad because the chips give it texture, but you can get so much of this other delicious stuff in there. And then I would top it with sour cream and the avocado, which I guess I can cut up this avocado. Do we have any questions as we're kind of wrapping up?
See, lots of cilantro. Well, I mean, I guess like we would expect, it's like half and half cilantro lovers and cilantro not fans. I'm definitely not a fan of cilantro either, and I try so hard to like it.
Well, don't feel bad, Beth, because it's not your fault.
Yeah, genetics.
It's genetics.
So look at this jackpot avocado right
It's
here.
beautiful, right?
Oh, gorgeous.
So I like to give myself the full half. There it goes. Julie and I are obviously eating when we're done.
We're eating a very delicious lunch.
There. So this would be like my Tuesday night. And
And also, if you all end up with leftovers here, both of these would be great for like freezing, right? So that you could easily freeze like the beef filling or the chili. So you could do the cook once, eat, many times thing, whether it's this week or, from the freezer later on.
I'm going to put my
tips and tricks
chili in view so you can kind of see what's going on in here.
Okay, so then there goes the sour cream, and then now I mix everything again.
If you want to take a peek at the chili, you can see look how much moisture is here. Lots of moisture going on. So I'm not going to need to add any broth or stock as of right now. And this is going to cook down for another total time, probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours. You'll know when the beef is really, really tender, or you can remove the lid at that point to get the desired consistency. If you want it a little bit thicker, you can just cook a little bit longer. And then some of that will evaporate. So if, again, it's too liquidy at the end, just take off the lid, let it kind of simmer for a little bit longer.
Oh, I can't wait for lunch. I know. That's good. All right. Yeah. So that's it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we have plenty of time for question and answers. We left that on purpose just if you have any culinary questions, nutrition questions about cooking beef, because I feel like some people are intimidated by cooking beef, but it could be very easy and very flavorful. Oh, shit. Question about, I think, taco seasoning.
Yes,
the
the
taco
seasoning mix is in the recipes. Yeah. So what I would say is take the part of the recipe that has the spices and then just do some kitchen math, multiply it by 10. Make sure you know how to, this would be good exercise. You got to convert your teaspoons to tablespoons and cups and all of that. And then you put it in a resealable, plastic container or a mason jar. And then you just have it always. And then you would use for a pound of beef, probably 2 tablespoons. when it's all mixed together.
Yeah, this way too, you can adjust it to meet your needs. And also, so a lot of times the prepackaged have a lot of sodium in them. And if you're seasoning to taste, you can't really control that. Yeah. So then you can add in your there.
What is your favorite beef cut for those on a budget, and how would you? I mean, I like ground beef. We use it every week.
I like the round too. The round, you can do so many things. The London broil, that's a good one.
I don't know what the prices of skirt and flank are now.
I guess depends your area too.
Yeah, it depends on your area, but I usually find a skirt steak or a flank steak goes a really, really long way. Because you can cook it and then eat it all week in, a million different ways.
I also like the London broil too, because we usually do that as like one big family meal, and then the leftovers I'll put in salads or like a burrito or wrap or something for leftovers.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for a link to drop in that links to some affordable beef cuts. So I'll be dropping that in the chat in just a moment too. So that would be some really good.
Yeah, I love that beef resource. You can also utilize the beef resource that has a whole list of all the different cuts, and then it will tell you if it's lean or not. Because I think people get a little confused of what are lean choices versus fattier cuts. But again, we potentially may want a fattier cut to help with different textures and consistencies. So it's good to really know all about all the cuts.
Yeah, and Kayla's asking about for 10 months old other cuts. I like brisket.
Yes, brisket.
Because it is fatty enough, you can drop it in the slow cooker and put any kind of spices and seasonings on it. And it gets stringy and you can make it really moist. And that's good for all ages.
I would love to, and I always ask everyone, would you make these recipes at home? And that's always the goal, because I never want to create recipes that are unrealistic. So you can mix and match recipes that you can buy these ingredients at the grocery store. There's no barrier there.
Absolutely. Let's see here. I'm going to drop actually another link here that to Julie's recommendation that you can really search by a variety of different cuts. So if you see something in the supermarket or something happens to be on sale, maybe you can purchase it in bulk to get it at a lower unit price. So you can explore those cuts and then have some different cooking techniques. And you'll also be able to find a specific cooking technique for that cut just to optimize the flavor. The last thing we would ever want anyone to do is purchase a cut of beef and not prepare it correctly, and then you don't have that great eating experience. So here's a really great resource that I'm going to drop in just a moment as well.
Also,
but yeah, we're seeing lots of great positive feedback on the recipes.
To the person, the butcher, or the meat department, they can help you with recommendations of what cut for what kind of recipe, or even get you kind of a specialty kind of cut, or break down something for you if you need to. Most grocery stores are pretty good about that. Yeah, I love that cut collection handout. So good.
Yeah. And again, I'll follow up with a lot of these links and materials will be in the follow-up email as well. But just since we're kind of like here on the topic, just dropping those in there. I don't know if you have any other suggestions just for like general spices that you may have kind of in your back pocket. So we obviously know the taco seasoning is a go-to, like any other like blends or, that would enhance the flavor of beef, in a variety of recipes.
Funny you said that, because we have a free resource. If you go to culinarynutritionstudio.com, you can download it. It's a spice and herb blend guide. So if you want to make your own combinations, we love that one, because again, if you don't have a Greek style blend, you can make your own. And we have all the measurements for that.
Yep. I love that. And then you have kind of like, it opens up your world of possibilities for other flavors, and like really just by adding a different seasoning blend, or some different combinations, you can create a whole new meal, with something that you might be cooking on the regular. So that's awesome. Let's see, we have, another person was suggesting to purchase like in bulk and then like break down and maybe like then freeze different smaller portions of the beef for later meals. I do that honestly myself. If I'll find like, a 3-pound pack of ground beef, that's way too much for my family of 3. So I'll break it down into some, maybe just like half pounds to freeze, some 1 pounds, kind of like odd amounts, just based on what I might be cooking it for. So that's really a cost saving effort that I have in my own family. So I was suggesting that they actually bought half of a beef, so they bought half of the actual animal to be able to freeze. So we kind of call that a freezer
That is
beef.
awesome.
So that's definitely economical, so supporting local farmers in your area. And actually, Kathleen, so I think on the website there, you'll find a really a number of great resources, because there you might be getting cuts you wouldn't typically see in the supermarket. So you'll have great recipe ideas and so forth to rely on. And the website for that spice resource, it's above culinarynutritionstudio.com.
You'll see it's a little downloadable resource for you.
Mm-hmm. But please drop those questions. We have a couple more minutes, about 10 more minutes here if there are any other questions. Sadly, this is our last of 3 webinars that we had in this past year. You will have access to the recordings for this one, of course, as well as the prior 2 webinars that you could still earn those continuing education credits for. So you'll receive that in the follow-up email as well. Tri-tip. Do you have any suggestions for the preparation of tri-tip?
Yeah, me too. I was just gonna say I haven't done that in a while.
I feel like I roast it,
Yeah.
but it's been a long time, so I'm trying to remember the last time I did that.
I mean, I'm sure there's a recipe on beef for
There's
dinner.
definitely a recipe on beef for dinner.
Yeah,
I can
also
drop in a
what
resource.
can be
It's a
fun-
lean cut as well.
Yeah, and what can be fun is I used to be a retail dietitian, and what people are so used to is they're on autopilot when they go to the grocery store. They pick up what they're used to, what they know. Try something new, or encourage clients to try something new. And that's where, especially where it's so important as healthcare providers, we know the food side too, because now maybe this affordable cut or this unique cut that they're not used to, that they're now seeing in the grocery store, we can help them learn how to cook with it. Oh, try something.
This question on round roast.
Oh, I'm going to answer the Barbara question. Any tips for cooking beef on the grill without overcooking? If you're not sure by the look or the feel, use a thermometer.
Yeah,
Your kitchen thermometer is going to be your best tool, because then you can exactly know what temperature it's going to be. The thing about it is, though, you need to remember carryover cooking. Once you remove it and it's sitting and resting, it's going to increase a couple degrees. It could be 5, depending on how big it is. Could be 10 degrees.
Yep.
So you want to make sure that you're not cooking it to temp on the grill, and you're going to let that rest time carry over cooking to get you to that point.
Yeah, and the same for Rita about doing a roast with the eye of round. I know that on beef, it's what's for dinner. It'll tell you how many pounds for what temperature for how long to cook it.
Mm-hmm.
But take it out, check the temperature, and remember it's probably going to go up another 5 or 10 pounds after you take it out and let it rest. 5 or 10 degrees.
Did your book get bigger? Imagine that would be the best invention. You buy a small thing, and then instead of inflation,
cooking and then it gets
bigger. It just get more.
It's like Willy Wonka beef. Okay. So you know what I'm saying. But yes, the thermometer is your friend.
Yes. Yeah, different kitchen tools. You don't need fancy equipment when it comes to cooking, but certain tools are really great. Like we talk about all day, sharp knives. You need your basic pots and pans. If you have like an Instant Pot or a slow cooker, you can easily transition this chili recipe into one of those, but not necessarily needed.
Absolutely. And just a quick note, I dropped in a cooking tips just there. You can actually search by technique. If you like really want to grill a different cut of beef, you can search kind of like reverse, look for the technique and then specific cut. So, and there's some really great cooking like 101 tips and tricks right there too. And so Barbara's asking for a good like instant thermometer. She's kind of struggled to find a reliable one. If you have any like advice on there.
A little bit of an investment, but ThermoWorks makes a really good one, and it lasts forever.
I have mine is locked away here. So, we can't get into it, but they always have it on sale around the holidays.
Yes, good idea.
I think I got mine for $70 around like a holiday savings something. And it's worth it. And it
Yeah.
always
If you're
works.
going to
Yeah.
be using it all the time, they also have different ones too. So even if you want to have like a big brisket and you have that in the oven, you can have the oven thermometers as well. So you can see what the cooking process is happening in real time in the oven. Use that for Thanksgiving.
Great advice. I feel like that's definitely a worthwhile investment, just like the sharp knife, like, you know, a great thermometer in the kitchen. I mean, you may spend up for it, but it's worth it. Let's see here. You see the question there from, is it Rita? If you cook a roast in a crock pot, should there be much liquid before starting the roast? And should you brown it first?
Browning, yes. Browning is going to sear it, and then as that meat is cooking, it's going to keep it really nice and tender and locked in there. If you skip that step, some of that moisture will be leaching out. You're going to start losing some of the flavor of that beef as well. So searing it locks it in, but then also that caramelization adds another layer of flavor.
Yeah. I don't use liquid if I'm roasting in a crock pot. That's more
A little
braise.
So yeah, usually a crock pot, you're putting everything in, and then natural moisture that's going to be released, and like the vegetables usually that are in there will really create that moist cooking method. A braise is where you would do stovetop. You would sear your meat first, and then you would add some liquid about maybe like a quarter to halfway up. And in that process, that braising liquid will continue that moist cooking method.
Yeah, really great advice. All right, well, we're at like kind of the 4 minute to 2:30 p.m. Eastern time mark. So I will jump into some of my wrap up talking points here. So if anyone does have questions, keep them coming. You know, and you do have access to Abby and Julie here after the fact as well. You have their website and ways to reach them that were shared earlier. So let me just kind of get to my final like housekeeping things. Just again, really want to thank this most dynamic duo. I think everyone really enjoyed your energy and your great content and your, above all, your expertise for today's webinar content. So thank you so much, Abby and Julie, for working with us to bring this webinar to life. This was so much fun. And so we just want to encourage everyone that's in attendance here. We do have a survey that will be dropped in the chat. We also have a QR code that you can access it in just a moment, but we want to encourage you to complete this very brief post-webinar survey for some feedback. We have 3 different winners that will be eligible to win a $25 beef swag packs. We're sweetening the deal to get you to do that brief survey. Just as, you know, kind of it's great information for us, and then, you know, someone will, or 3 people will win that swag pack. You want to just complete that survey by midnight tomorrow night, midnight Eastern time, that is August 10th, for your chance to win. I promise we won't be spamming you with you know, materials and resources if you're not interested. This is just really for our feedback on the survey. So please take a moment to complete that here, either here, or you'll receive that link in the follow-up webinar email and momentarily after we wrap up. Also in the email, you'll find relevant resources that were mentioned throughout our presentation today, the recipes as mentioned. So you'll receive PDF of that, the link to the recording, the CEU certificate. Most importantly, this was approved for 1.5 continuing education credits. And then I also mentioned that you'll receive the links to our recordings from the January and May webinars that you'll be able to view, and then you'll be able to link to the CEU certificate for both of those as well. And so with that, I think unless there are any other questions, comments, we are ready to wrap up. Any other final comments, Abby and Julie?
Thanks for joining us today. We had fun cooking with you. Even though we didn't see you, but we know you're there.
Yeah, and feel free to email us or reach out anytime.
Happy now.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And again, look for that follow-up email to come sometime later this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.